Welcome to Solution Spotlights with the CEA team at Griffin. Our Solution Spotlights are short, casual conversations where we bring our suppliers together with our in-house technical team to give you on-point solutions for everyday problems. Today, we are going to address a challenge for cultivation. What do you need to think about if you need to make a sudden change to your growing media? Related to this, what are the key features that you should be considering when it comes to pots? With us, we have Jordan Pekowski from the HC Companies and a team from Lambert Peat, including Fred Gagnon, Otto Kaufman, and Rick Moran. We will also hear from Erica Hernandez of the CEA team, and our very own Will Green kicks us off.
COVID has impacted availability of some important cultivation inputs. Some customers have yet to adapt their just-in-time model to longer lead times. This can create a sudden, unplanned need to change media. For some growers, this has made doubly hard because they have been using pre-filled grow bags. So now they have to go choose a new media and pots to put it in. How can we help them make these choices, especially when we don't have the luxury of doing trial tests?
Well, Will, that's a good question. So, a sudden change in availability is always going to be pretty stressful for a cultivation team. And sometimes that's going to include media, it'll include containers. And there's a number of things that a team's going to have to keep in mind when they're looking for a substitute or how to fill this availability on the front of media and containers. So let's talk about media first, some considerations that they'll want to keep in mind. With media, our ultimate goal is to promote and support a healthy root system. That's what we got to remember when we're selecting our media. And to do that, the media is going to provide water, oxygen, and nutrients to our plants in the appropriate amounts. So there's some physical properties of media that growers should be aware of when they are understanding what they currently have, as well as when they're trying to identify a substitute. So first of all, we've got soil texture. Now this is really a bird's eye view of the soil. Texture can be coarse, medium, or fine, and this really refers to basically the particle size of what's in that media. Maybe your media is pretty chunky, so it's coarse. It's got lots of little pieces of bark or wood along with the finer grains in there. Or maybe it's really, really fine grain where it's a really soft media that you might use for germination mix or something like that. So the next thing that we would want to think about there is nutrient availability, or the CEC, the cation exchange capacity of your media. So this goes beyond just the physical and starts to get into a little bit more of a chemical consideration. Different media types will hold on to nutrients a bit differently. So something like a peat-based media might hold on to nutrients a bit stronger or longer than coir or rock wool. So growers should be aware of what they're currently using, first of all, and how that media affects their current nutrient regime. And you're also going to want to make sure that you're monitoring the EC, or the electrical conductivity, in your media. Now, that's definitely required anytime you are applying water-soluble nutrients or any type of nutrition to your plants in production. So those are the big things that growers want to think about with media. But media isn't everything. It's not the only thing that might be in short supply, especially with that example we started off with, the pre-filled bags with media. You've still got to replace that bag. So I'm going to let our container experts talk a little bit more about that. But some things that you might want to think about keeping in mind with containers are pot durability, labeling needs, pot size versus plant size. Larger plants might need a larger pot. Workflow and automation, how the pot size or pot type will fit into that process. And then, how are they supporting the pots and how much does it cost based on different types of materials? So that's just a broad overview of what we're looking at here. And that's why we brought our container and media experts with us today to dive a little bit deeper into those.
Thank you, Erica. That's a lot to think about. Jordan, let's talk about pots first. Tell us about the drainage hole location. Why choose a side drainage hole over a bottom drainage hole?
Well, this all depends on, how heavy-handed you are when it comes to watering. Are you a grower that waters a lot? Do you water a few times a day? Do you kind of overwater? These are questions that you have to ask yourself as a grower, and then that'll determine what container and what hole for the drainage that you need. Do you need a high hole? Do you need a side drain? Do you need a bottom hole? These are all things that will affect the plant and the crop at the end of the day. Don't take into consideration if you do water a little bit heavy on the heavy side.
What about the shape? Why choose round? Is it better for automation?
Round is better for automation, yes, but we do see growers use square containers. Square containers is all about space within your facility you're growing in, your greenhouse, and on what benches and tables that you're growing on. If you want everything packed closer together, if you're growing smaller containers, usually in propagation phase, then you move into a larger container, into the rounds for your transplanting into a larger container. You're usually going into an injection, a thermoformed, or a blow molded style container for a larger container.
What about the pot type? Why choose injection molded versus thermoformed or blow molded?
Well, your injection molded container is kind of like the Cadillac of all containers. It's your most durable. It's usually a container that you're going to use year over year. It's more of like kind of a capital investment if you look at it that way. If you're growing outdoors, you're going to want to grow into an injection molded container, just because you can really wear and tear on these containers and they're going to last for a while. If you move into a blow mold, this is more of your middle of the line container. You will get larger sizes. You can go all the way up to 65 gallon. But if automation isn't something that you use or it doesn't apply to you, then blow mold is probably your best bet for growing out of. Then you move into your thermoform containers. Your thermoform containers is your most economical container. It's automation friendly. It's usually on the starter sizes, the smaller pots, the 1s, the 2s gallons that you have.
Some pots are ribbed. Does this make a difference for cannabis growers?
It does if you're looking for strength. The ribs add strength to the container, and you do experience some automation issues if you're looking at denesting. Something that I always tell growers is the less or the more interruption you have around the base of that container, sometimes the harder it is to pull apart. So you always want that smooth side wall if you're using automation.
What about rims and handles?
Rims and handles, those come into play when you're transporting the container. If it's human labor that you're using, you want to go with handles, strong, durable handles for lifting up those larger containers, moving them from maybe one bench to another or inside to outside. When it comes to the rims, that's when the fork systems come into play, and you can move multiple containers at one time to move from one location to the other.
Well, thanks, Jordan. That helps to clear it up. Rick and Otto, let's turn to media. Can you tie this back to what Erica mentioned?
PC25, whatever the media, it's always important to consider the same criteria as Erica mentioned earlier regarding the airspace and water retention. You can add the drainage also for that kind of container. Irrigation management, for example, it's really important as customer growing on the wet side can maybe need something that will drain slightly more. So depending on the season also, as a sunny summer condition or a cloudy winter influence a lot the way the mix will dry out. You should consider the location also, as Southern Texas or the Northeast don't have the same requirement either. So the best is to discuss all those details with your rep to be able to get the better mix available for the usage you needed.
What is the most important for smaller pots, 4-inch to a gallon?
Well, we have many medias for that, and I can recommend quite a few. We have LM111, which is general purpose. We also have LM19, which was offered to Griffin on account of you had a lot of customers that were being provided with the media from one of our competitors, where they had problems or they wanted to use a particular media for smaller plugs and in order to incorporate it into a larger pot, such as a 4-inch. So that would be LM19.
Now, what about big pots, 3+ gallons?
For the big container, you will look for a long-lasting structure of the mix, minimal shrinkage, as the mix will last longer in that container and will stay in it for a longer period of time. You don't want a media that will begin to deteriorate quickly. So you will avoid the appearance of fine particles.
At CEA@griffinmail.com.
Container, reducing the drainage or even clogging the drainage.
All right, so what is EcoPeat and how can it help a grower?
As the bogs form, these conifers grow in the bogs, shrubs, whatever. They die, they fall in the bog. The pH of the water is about 3. There's no oxygen. And they're buried under this. The moss grows over them for 100 years, 1,000 years, or whatever. And as we vacuum, this wood becomes exposed. It's been aged. It's assimilated the same pH as the peat. And it doesn't tie up the nitrogen as young bark would do so, where it has to be treated, composted, aged, or whatever.
The advantage of those fibers is that they are really stable because of the condition in the bog, the anaerobic environment, acidic environment. So it's really long before it begins to deteriorate in the mix. So by that fact, the structure of the media lasts longer. It's very different compared to a regular bark mix, as the bark need to be pre-composed to get rid of the toxin in it. So that process will continue once in the container. So the EcoPeat will really help keeping the structure because you don't have that process going on.
In the past, most growers have been relying on bark medias. And that's one of the reasons why we came with the EPM. The wood will outlast any bark. And as Fred had mentioned, in Canada, we have no southern pine. It's mostly fir. And that turns to muck in no time in the pot, especially when the heat heats that black pot, especially in the south or wherever. It will turn to muck. And by doing so, you have nothing but mud in the bottom of the pot. The wood fibers will outlast the bark much longer, 2 to 1. So it's a great product. And as he had said, it's been in the ground for so many years. It's pretty much assimilated the same pH as the peat. It's aged. All the process of aerobic and anaerobic changes, and it's wonderful products. I'm sold on it completely.
What do growers need to know about storing their media? Is there a shelf life?
Yes, rotation of the mix is essential. The way to manage it is first in, first out, because the wetting agent begin to lose efficiency after a couple months. So we always recommend 6, 7, 8 months storage. That's the best way to work with your media. That's the principal point for the customer to look at, as the mix itself is consistent and already passed through a quality control procedure at the facility.
Thank you for all this great information. For our customers, if you are looking for a sudden need to change your media or pots, let us know. We can help you through this process. If you have any questions about what you saw today, don't hesitate to reach out to Griffin or the rep. Give us a call at 1-800-888-0054, extension 89199, or email us